Hey there, my name's Lewis and this is Kakou Talk, a podcast about accessibility and community brought to you by Kakou Technologies. You're listening to episode 3 with Fomukong-Boden. Check out the link in the description of this episode for a full transcription of this episode's audio. I hope you enjoy. Hey there and welcome to the third episode of Kakou Talk. As usual, my name's Lewis and I'll be your host for the next half an hour. Now, in our first two episodes, me and my guests have spoken quite a fair bit about community, social outreach and accessibility. But today, I think I wanted to focus a little bit more on ourselves at Kakou. And I really couldn't think of a better person to sit down with than Kakou's very own Managing Director, Principal Electronic Engineer and Co-Founder, Anne Fomukong-Boden. How are you doing, Anne?
I'm good, thank you. How are you today?
I'm great. I'm fine. I'm excited to do this with you. I felt this should have been the sort of first episode almost, but I think it's nice to kind of give some context to what I've been talking about in the last couple of episodes with yourself.
Cool. I'm happy to be involved.
So, I mean, obviously, I think, we've known each other for like, quite a few months now as I've been working here, and I suppose just a very broad start here. I just want to ask you about, how did Kakou start? From the person who co-founded it, from someone who's so involved in the operations every single day. I'd like to know kind of where did the idea for the Kakou come from? Has it always been there? Was it more of a recent development? But in your own words, how did Kakou sort of begin?
Wow. Okay. So the idea for Kakou, I think it started as far back as 2015. Myself and my husband, Mark, who is also the other co-founder, we are both electronic engineers, and we were both at the time designing audio electronics, so anything that you can make music with, make a sound with, and at the same time we were doing a lot of kind of volunteer work within the community, mainly with creative arts groups, and we started to witness a lot of disabled artists essentially trying to use the kind of products and technologies that we were designing as part of our day-to-day job, but failing, and mainly because of the state-of-the-art features that we were putting into these products. So things we take for granted, such as a touch screen, such as an embedded menu, that was actually making it more difficult for disabled artists to use those products. And they wanted to use those products. That was the main thing. They weren't looking for bespoke assistive technologies. They wanted to use the same mainstream products that everyone else within their industry was using. So we thought, well, in all honesty, if those accessible features are designed into products at the start, then it's not like you can just, it's not a case of having an add-on at the end to make it accessible. It's accessibility built in inherently to the product. Therefore, you open it up to a wider audience and to everyone who wants to use it. So with that in mind, that's where the kind of the starting point for Kakou existed.
That's really interesting. I didn't realize that you started in with that kind of idea of music. Because I know we've spoken a lot about how you've always kind of have an interest in music and designing accessible musical equipment and musical instruments. I didn't realize that was kind of like the origin point of Kakou until now.
Yeah, well, I mean, music is a massive hobby for myself. So I play several instruments. I sing. Like I said, I've always been involved in music groups, whether playing or singing within a band or a community choir. So for me, and to be honest, I got into engineering through music. So one of the first things I ever designed, and this is whilst I was actually still at college, I wanted a way that I could hook in my electrical guitar to my, this is going to show my age, my cassette player, and be able to listen to the two simultaneously through my headphones. So it was a very, very crude mixing device. So that was my first electronic project, and it was all as a way that I could play my music quietly without disturbing my mum. So,
Do you
so yeah,
think?
so
Sorry,
that's
you
the
go on.
origins. No, that's the origins of Kakou. So yeah, it came out of my love of music, really.
I had no idea of that. I can't believe I didn't know that. Do you think that so at KQ, obviously, I mean, I've spoken about it in the podcast, and you know more than anyone that we're so involved in several sort of arts workshops and music workshops, and we've always kind of had a focus on accessibility and creativity, and we work with a lot of artists in the area to do that with people. Do you think that like our heavy amount of involvement in those workshops and those ideas and that sort of creative side, do you think that kind of comes from your love of music? Do you think that like getting involved in the arts with this kind of angle on accessibility has always, ever since you started with the music, it's kind of been something you wanted to pursue?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, yes, I love music, but I also love the creative arts, and I think anyone that knows me that knows that I've got quite an eclectic taste of, or eclectic range of hobbies. So um, yeah, I've always loved making things. So whether it's making a piece of art, or making jewelry, or um, making a piece of electronics that makes a sound that we can use within the workshop. Yeah, I suppose I'm quite a hands-on, practical person who likes to explore the different creative arts and creative mediums. So yeah, and that as an extension has been has driven the work, especially the community engagement work that we do with Kakou.
So I was wondering if we're talking a lot about the early days here. What were those first sort of weeks with KQ like? How was it kind of like deciding we're going to start a social enterprise, we're going to start an accessible engineering company? What was it like kind of finding funding, finding an office space, finding kind of opportunities in which to network? Did you kind of springboard off your previous engineering work, or did you kind of have to start fresh?
Ooh, in some ways, we started afresh. So we always knew that we wanted to be a social enterprise, that we wanted to be a business as a force for good. So we first got in contact with the School for Social Entrepreneurs, and we enrolled in their startup program, and that was great because that gave us a whole background into how to create a business, all the different types of businesses and incorporation types that we could be as a social enterprise, all the kind of business management and corporate governance side of things. So that was a nice grounding with regards to that side of things. And then obviously we had the engineering experience. We've been very fortunate to be able to work within companies where we've worked on concept designs and seen them go all the way through to actual manufacturing, and actually worked on every stage of that process, start right to finish, including marketing and commercialization. So we've got that experience and the project management that goes into that. And then I think with the community work we were already involved within, it was just a case of talking to people. So we've always, anything that we've designed, whether that's a product or a service or a workshop, we've always spoken to the end user, the people who will actually be participating,
Yeah.
so that we know that whatever we design is going to be fit for purpose. So that conversation is an ongoing thing as well. It never stops. It's iterative, I suppose, because every time, say, we make a change to a product or a service, you have to keep having that conversation with the end user just to make sure that that change is actually a positive change and we've not gone 2 steps backwards. So yeah, it's been there are various things that come together, but I think because of our our experiences, the new knowledge that we've learned through various training courses that we've been on, and like I say, that constant conversation with our community. It's made things a lot easier in terms of progressing. It's not been a quick thing. We've been progressing slowly at this. Like I say, we started in 2015. So it's not something that happens overnight, but as long as we keep moving slowly in the right direction, then we know that we'll reach our objectives.
Yeah, I mean, I think that conversation with the end user is something that's really important, especially when you're dealing with accessibility, you know, because it's never quite a one size fits all thing. It's always about like compiling the thoughts and opinions of a number of individuals, and it's almost trying to find like an average of like how we need to think like net most amount of people we can help with these features, with this product, with this technology. And I think that's something that's kind of missing a lot of accessible settings and features, and just even like baseline accessible technology. It seems to be catered to like this kind of like ideal in the head of the designer disabled person, but it doesn't really take into consideration the certain nuances of that, of those disabilities and those conditions.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I recall one product we were actually we're still designing, still going through the R&D process, and it was, or it is, a way to enable blind musicians to participate within a mainstream music group, such as an orchestra. And so we had a group of blind musicians who tested out one of our earlier prototypes, and I suppose we had a preconception of kind of what they'd want and how this product would actually work with them. And it's regarding haptic feedback, so vibration patterns that will portray a certain message. And the solution that we put in front of them, we had 5 musicians, all who play different instruments, and the feedback we got from them, 5 different solutions, they all wanted something ever so slightly different, because for their particular need, it just needed to be something that could be a bit more bespoke for them. So as an engineer, then you've got to come up with not really a compromise, but a way that you can fulfill all of those requirements, but within one product. And I mean, that's the challenge of any engineer, I think. But it's being aware that you know, not one solution will fit all. Therefore, you need to have that that flexibility within a solution.
I think that like, I mean, you know, getting back to what I said about like some people, they seem to still not really necessarily understand the purpose of accessible features and stuff. I think that we see like so many. I guess what I want to ask you is like, why do you think some companies and some engineers, why do you think that kind of like those accessibility needs sort of slip through the cracks for them? Why do you think they kind of make these mistakes, or they just flat out don't consider it? Do you think it's something that's like, do you think it's conscious? Do you think it's a matter of time and funding, or do you think it's just a matter of, I mean, not to use too aggressive a word here, but do you think it's just sort of a disregard?
Ooh, I mean, there are several reasons. Like you say, one is just a general disregard, not seeing the disabled as part of their consumer group. There's that side. Sometimes the features are seen as being expensive. However, I mean, looking at smartphones nowadays, looking at laptops and tablets, watches, all these actually have some very great accessibility features already built in. And in some cases, it's just the software that needs to open those features out. But in terms of hardware, that possibility has always been there. And we're seeing more and more that actually these features are actually being opened up just by software components being added. So yes, there's additional time resource put into writing that software, but you could argue that actually if you'd thought about it from the start, maybe then that time resource could have been better managed, and the cost of that wouldn't be as high, say. So I think people are now realizing that if you design something that is inclusive, and even if it's beneficial for even if you add additional features that are beneficial for say a smaller group of your market place, actually you'll find those features are beneficial for everyone within that marketplace, and therefore you actually open up your product to a greater market. There's more there's added value to your product just by including what you saw as a kind of a minority consumer group actually just brings a lot more benefit to your wider market.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's almost like a side effect of the disabled people and disabled customers almost being seen as like this outside demographic, where it's just like, okay, well, maybe we can't appeal to them, but we can appeal to everyone else. It's almost like, yeah, I think it is kind of a slight disregard. And I think when these people are weighing up, do we add it, do we not? It's kind of unfortunate that in the past it's always been, well, we won't. But I think it's inspiring nowadays because I see. I mean, I'm not necessarily the most tech savvy person, but like everyone, I have little gadgets and little things, and I'm quite taken aback now, especially working with Kakou, and I'm a little bit more conscious of these things, how baked in accessibility features are from the very start. This is like when you boot up a new computer or a new phone, there are like screen readers enabled. There are, they present them in different languages. There seems to be this like care and gosh, I mean, even like, hobby of mine, I play a lot of games, and then they, from the very start, like I said, there are screen readers, there's haptic feedback, there is translators for on-screen actions. If you're deaf, they have like sound indicators. It's a lot of technology now, and a lot of software seems to kind of be shipping with this baked in from the start. If you need it, it's there. It's not like something you need to find. It's nothing you need to download. We have it here, and I think that's quite an inspiring thing to see.
It is, and I mean, even if you're not looking at it from, say, a disability point of view, everyone has access requirements. It's not just the disabled. We've got people with pushchairs, children. You need the access requirements just to make their lives easier going from A to B.
Yeah.
You've got individuals who, I love this. There's a phrase that I heard recently called the wonky market. So
yes, I remember talking to you about the is it wonky or wobbly?
We'll go with wobbly. I think probably sounds better.
I think it's wobbly, but yeah, I remember talking. Yeah. Again, I think it's sweet. I think it's this like wider consideration of what accessibility is. I think when people hear like accessibility for disabled people, they automatically think like they think braille, they think wheelchair ramps, which of course are fundamental and important, but it extends to so many more people than I think people initially, when they hear disabled accessibility, they have this kind of idea in their head, and it's just it's so much broader, it's such a wider umbrella than I think they realize.
Yeah, it really is. And when you actually start asking just the general public about their needs when they want to, say, travel from A to B, or access a service, and you start asking about what they would like to see just to make that process easier for them, you then start to appreciate that actually everyone requires something just to make their lives easier. And if one person requires something, chances are there are going to be thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people who actually have that same requirement. So no, it's about just thinking in broader terms of access. Like, it's not just the disabled as we traditionally think of the disabled, it's actually for everyone. So in that way, it becomes about being inclusive. So taking everyone's kind of trying to see everyone's point of view and their perspective, and doing the best you can to provide a service which will help as many people as possible.
Yeah, I mean, going back to what you said about accessibility, something that I've spoken about on this podcast now in the last 2 episodes, is that something that we care about, because also, while we are, very heavily and fundamentally an accessible technology engineering company, it's something that it's something we do and have done constantly. It's something that you, as you said, have a real passion and interest in. But I think accessibility it extends beyond physical technology and pieces of engineering. It's also about opportunity. It's also about the chances for people from certain backgrounds or maybe certain demographics to have the opportunity to partake in certain activities and certain passions and certain hobbies. And I think that just goes hand in hand with, for example, as you were saying, like the Accessible Orchestra project you were involved in, which is because I think when people see the work of Kakou and they see the care they have for disabled people and this kind of strides that we're taking in accessibility, it really does go to show that, like, when we do work as a social outreach and as a community enterprise, that, like, this care is very tangible, it's very real, it's very potent. And one thing I've always liked about Kakou, not to, like, obviously, I work here now, it's not like I'm being told to say this, but I think it's something that was really impressive to me, and the Accessible Orchestra project in particular. And that's actually the reason I interviewed. It was the reason I made the choice to kind of write up that cover letter and seek out the opportunity, because I just thought it showed this really unique care, not just for the physical needs of people, but also just this broad, empathetic sort of desire to provide opportunities to people.
Yeah, cool. Well, I didn't know that about the reason that you applied to us, but yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I mean, one thing that we've always been very aware of is the provision of opportunities for people just to participate, to try different things, to show off what they're actually capable of. Because, I mean, it shouldn't be an issue that I'm a black female engineer, but
Yeah.
even now, whilst we're still striving for equality within certain industries, I know that people are still surprised to learn that I am an electronic engineer, and I often wonder about the opportunities that other people are afforded or not afforded because of preconceptions of their capabilities. So it's one of those things where I don't want to ever underestimate someone because
No.
of a preconception that maybe they have a learning difficulty. But that doesn't stop them from actually learning. It just means that you need to find a different method to portray that idea to them. It's not that they can't learn. It's just that it's a different method to maybe the mainstream way of education. So it's affording everyone the opportunity to try things out, to work out what they are actually capable of doing, and helping them as well. So yeah, that's one thing that at Kakou we are very passionate about doing, and we try and find partners within, or not even within our industry, but other organisations who have that same value of inclusiveness and allowing other people to, I suppose, explore their own potential.
Yeah, I think that when you kind of work in accessibility and you work in those fields of community outreach and social enterprising, it's a matter of, you have to see every kind of issue. I mean, like you said this earlier in our conversation, that engineering has always been about, like, how do we make this work for everyone? But when you bring accessibility into the fold and you're thinking more about those needs and those nuances to a project, it becomes much more intricate and it becomes a lot more in depth. But I think that you go into these things with a sense of how can we help people do everything rather than what can they not do. You know, I think that's I guess that's like a fundamental sort of pillar of working in accessibility, but it's something that I just see in Kakou. It kind of bleeds into everything we do. Even like you said, even if just not losing these preconceptions and allowing people the opportunity to partake in everything and give them the benefit of the doubt of what they want to do and how effectively they can do it, no matter whether it's a disability, it's an accessibility need, or if it's just a matter of their background, you know. But I mean, going back to the start of our conversation about the origin of Kakou, you started in 2015. I knew Kakou had been around for some years now. I didn't quite realize it was coming up to 7 years. But I want to know, because Kakou started with you and your husband Mark as the co-founders and kind of sole employees of it, and you brought myself and our full stack developer O'Neill on at the same time last year. I'm wondering, what was it like starting that, just being a little two-person business? How how did that factor into the already, I imagine, probably quite difficult startup when you start a company like this?
Ooh, a lot of multitasking, a lot of kind of divide and conquer in terms of the workload. But I think because we're both engineers, and like I said, we've been lucky to have worked in companies where we actually get involved in every single part of the process of creating something and bring it to market. There was a lot of project management expertise that we already had kind of inbuilt. So we made a plan. I suppose you'd call it a business plan, but yes, we made a plan, and we knew that things were not going to happen overnight. So we just planned. I suppose we planned our journey. We knew it was going to be a slow burner with just the two of us working on this project. We knew our capabilities. We knew, I suppose, how long things would actually take. But we also realised as from day one that we needed to have a good network of people around us. So whether that's other freelance engineers, some of who we paid for their time, some of whom actually volunteered their time to help us, whether that's community organisations who helped with some of the R&D ideas, so people we could go and talk to and bounce ideas off. So we always knew that from day one we'd need a very, very good group of people around us and a good network around us that we could call on to help us progress through our journey. And so, yes, start off with, there's only two of us. We had external people who were helping as well. So, I mean, a lot of this as well is our focus on sustainability.
Yes.
So we've always known that we wanted to build an organisation that would last, and that would also make a lasting impact. And in engineering is an expensive business. We know that. So we knew that whatever we did, we would have to be, I suppose, frugal and measured. So we'll always move.
Words when starting
yes.
a company.
So always with the key aim of progression and moving forwards, but we can't just go out there and we don't have hundreds of thousands of pounds to just spend on R&D. So we've had to do it in a gradual and measured way, while still trying to have this community engagement side as well to make that impact. So yeah, so we're 7 years in and we are still moving forward and we're still progressing, and things are starting to come together now, and well enough that we can take on 2 additional full-time members of staff. So things are obviously going in the right direction.
I'm really glad to hear it. I think that to kind of hear in your own words the kind of story of Kakou, the inspirations, the sort of origins of it, and kind of the slow, like you said, the slow road to a point where things are starting to come together. The snowball is rolling down the hill a little faster now. It's something, I think the work that you and Mark have done in the years before I ever even interviewed, of course, I think it's really inspiring. I think it speaks to a real passion for accessibility and a real care for people from all walks of life and in all states of being. And I think that for two people to have accomplished so much in such a relatively short amount of time, it's something that, again, I keep saying this word, it's very inspiring. And I think being a part of Kakou now is something that I'm very, very proud of.
Cool, well, thank you.
All right. But yeah, I mean, we're kind of hitting the time now. So I think we should maybe wrap this up a little bit, but I really enjoyed talking to you. I think these are some, I mean, we talk quite often, we talk every week, but kind of getting to hear a little bit more about the origin of Kakou has been really interesting. I think I've learned some very cool things about you and Mark in this conversation.
Cool, I'm glad to hear that.
But yeah, that's going to bring us to the end of episode 3 of Kakou Talk with Anne Fomukong-Boden. I've had a really interesting time talking to her about Kakou, and I hope you have listening. So, you know, goodbye from myself, Lewis at Kakou, and from Anne.
Yep, goodbye.
Thank you for listening.